They're called stairways to heaven, centuries-old vineyards carved into the steep hillsides and rugged canyons of Portugal's Douro Valley. Rising as high as 1,000 meters above the river below, these terraces were built from the very rock and schist that made the Douro one of the most uncompromising landscapes in all of Europe. Yet here, in this once remote, defiant place, nature and history have conspired to create one of the world's most treasured wines, port.
Well, basically, port is a fortified, what we call a fortified red wine from this region of the Douro Valley of Portugal. The grapes have been crushed just like for a normal table wine, but we've actually stopped the fermentation halfway through by adding what we call brandy. It's like a 77% alcohol by volume grappa. And by adding brandy, you kill the yeast off, so you end up with the wine having about half its natural sugar. So the wine is semi-sweet with a slightly higher alcoholic content than standard red wine.
No one knows who first added brandy to wine, a process now called fortification. But what is clear is that the impetus came not from an ancient winemaker's cellar, but was born of geopolitics, empires, and war.
Port was actually invented by the British as much as the Portuguese.
Beginning in the 17th century, perpetual conflict with France led British merchants to seek out alternative sources of wine, especially in Portugal.
Some of the original port wines were actually wines sourced on the coast of Portugal, and as the market developed, people's tastes got more sophisticated, and merchants started coming upriver, trying to find better wines. And the Douro Valley, which is some 70 or 80 miles from where we are to the coast, the wines from this region were considered fantastic. The trouble is, the whole trip, the journey downriver, it then would have to be shipped a couple of days to England, and the wine, having come that much further, would spoil. So that's when they started adding brandy, and that's what, helped preserve the wine and make it famous.
The additional brandy ensured that wine shipments from the Douro made the long journey to England. Continued unrest between Britain and France spurred demand for port and led to the rapid transformation of wine production in the Douro well into the 19th century. Winemakers, for example, began to define proper wine-to-brandy ratios that not only made the port more stable, but also created truly unique flavors and character. Wines were no longer transported in resin-lined goatskins, but rather in large barrels known as pipes, still the standard measure of port today. In the spring, these pipes were loaded aboard small skiffs, known as robelos, for the dangerous journey from Douro to Oporto, from where they were shipped to England and abroad. Today, a new revolution is underway, led by companies like the Symington family estates, the world's leading port producer. The Symington family can trace their roots in the industry back 13 generations, to the very founding of the port trade in the 1600s. They now oversee 24 quintas, where famous ports like Dow's, War, and Graham's are born.
We've got about 3 million vines now under our management and ownership.
And while they're fully aware of port's rich heritage, their focus is very much on the future.
This is the Quinta dos Malvedos winery. Malvedos is a property that has been associated with the Graham port brand since 1890. And these buildings were where the original port was made from the Malvedos estate. Traditionally, port was made by foot treading, and a bunch of people, about 20 people, would jump into a tank and literally stomp it by foot.
Foot treading was first practiced by the ancient Romans, who recognized that small, thick-skinned grapes, like those grown in the Douro, needed to be crushed firmly and quickly to initiate fermentation and extract the optimum flavor and color. Traditional presses simply did not apply the same direct pressure as human feet, which ground the grapes into the floor of the stone tank, known as a lagar. In the 1960s, the Symingtons installed an auto-vinification system that uses pressure built up during fermentation to maximize extraction. But for the finest ports, the system just couldn't match the juice tread by foot. And so the family made a long-term commitment to design and build a robotic lagar.
It has 4 plates that slide over each other hydraulically. There are silicon toes on the end of the plates, and those silicon toes will literally grind the skins against the floor of the tank. The feet themselves are temperature controlled. They're heated up to 37 degrees centigrade, same as the human leg. So you've got a warming effect in the feet. They also can work all night if they have to, whereas the humans would only do it for 2 or 3 hours in the late evening.
Once fermentation has brought the wine to the desired sugar levels, the fermenting wine is drained into a storage vat where the neutral flavored brandy is added.
We add about 1 part of brandy at 77% alcohol by volume to about 4 parts of must, which is at about 7% alcohol by volume. So if you do the math, it works out a wine at about 19.5–20% alcohol for the finished blend.
Once it is settled, the wine will travel downriver, where it will be judged for flavor, clarity, and other characteristics.
Well, we'll take some of these lots and then we'll put them on the bench and we'll try and put them together in such a way to make something really great. Occasionally you'll have one individual blend, which is great, but we believe, like, 2 + 2 can add up to 5 in our business. You can really put 2 things together and make something even better than the sum of the parts.
In general, port can be divided into 2 fundamental styles. Ruby port is aged in oak, then bottled after 3 years, and features a bright red color and general fruitfulness. Conversely, tawny ports are aged in oak at least 6 years, during which time their color and nature transform.
The longer you leave it in barrel, the wine goes from that purpley red color and it fades into a lovely nutty kind of amber brown color.